Hi there.
Hi, nice to meet you.
What's your name?
Gerard.
Hello, Gerard.
Nice to meet you, sir. So you've said that worship is when you...
Okay, he's gonna ask some clarifying questions. I can interrupt because I don't really need to hear him as well because I'll get the context by Peterson's answer. This guy's coming with notes. That's good. You know, the few people who've showed up with notes so far have done better than the others. With the exception of Zena, she did all that off the top of her head, which I got to give her credit for. Leather binder. So either he is taking this very seriously, or he is perhaps a little pretentious. I don't know. We'll find out. He seems to have the right kind of like a temperament for this. He hasn't shown any of the Schadenfreude when other people have been playing their little fucking dick games. At least not when the camera's been on him. Hopefully he does better than the last asshat. Because Danny, you should be fucking ashamed of yourself. You should have walked out of this fucking building and considered never turning on OBS again. Because I know they found you somehow. I know that you're some kind of content creator or influencer or friend of an influencer. They found you somehow. You should be fucking ashamed. You should never be doing this. Gerard, please do better.
Prioritize and sacrifice for something, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
But there's a hierarchy in there.
Sure. So I prioritize and sacrifice for my wife more than I would prioritize and sacrifice for a random person on the street, right?
Probably, yeah.
Presumably. Do I worship
I don't know.
my
I've
wife?
seen some pretty bad marriages.
Assuming a good marriage, are you saying I worship my wife?
I'm trying to define worship.
Well, that's what I'm asking. So prioritize and sacrifice.
The higher it is in the hierarchy, the more what you're doing is akin to worship. But even in your trivial acts of attention, you're prioritizing and partaking in worship, even if you don't know it.
So I am.
And it's part of,
okay. So, no, Peterson. If everything is worship, then nothing is worship. And the way you just defined that, you made even the most trivial prioritization an act of worship, a minor act of worship. You made everything worship. Any form of prioritization is worship. Therefore, nothing's fucking worship, asshole. Think about what you're doing. Only the most brain-dead people are going to fall for this.
With regard to your wife, say, so why do you value your wife? You do value your wife.
Okay. I love her, so I prioritize and sacrifice for her.
Right. So that's within the confines of love, let's say.
Sure.
What else does it serve?
What else does what serve?
Your love in your marriage.
I mean, I am married to my wife because I love her. That's also why I prioritize and sacrifice for her. Right. I certainly wouldn't think I worship her, and I don't think anyone else would make that.
I'm trying to make a definition.
Okay.
Yeah, that there's a hierarchy of attentional priority, and as you move up it or down it, depending on whether you think about it as a pinnacle or a foundation, you move more towards worship. Right. Okay. So even the small things, I'll give you an example. Imagine you go on a date. Well, and imagine that your aim is a long-term relationship like a marriage. Okay, now imagine that your aim is short-term sexual gratification. Your pattern of attention is going to vary during the date, depend on your ultimate aim.
Okay, now you're talking about a sociological implication of intentionality within pair bonding situations as a form of indicated potential worshipfulness or deprioritization, depending on how you want to view it. Like, what? Peterson, I know I said it in one of these videos recently because this is all fucking being run. Are you high? Seriously, dude, what the fuck are you smoking to come up with this fucking bong rip theology? Whatever it is, smack your fucking dealer.
And that's the hierarchy. The way that you attend to your wife is dependent on your ultimate aims, even if you don't know it.
So at what point is it worship? Because it sounds like you're saying worship is almost a spectrum, right? It's not a binary. It's not a.
It's kind of like that. That's a good question. It's
when is it worship as opposed to just I love my wife?
The closer you get to the top or the bottom, the more it's more like
How
worship.
close to the top? Because I don't think I worship anything. And if you're saying I have to hit a certain threshold for it to be worship, it is possible I don't worship anything then, right?
It's not possible that you don't worship anything.
What do I worship?
Because you wouldn't.
Yeah. See, Peterson, this is the problem with your bullshit Petersonian definitions. He just pointed out the flaw in your logic. So if it's not worship, as you defined everything as worship, and he caught on to that, if it's not worship, it has to be at a certain point up or down the spectrum, whether it's a pinnacle or a foundation. And for it to be worship, his question is very valid. If he doesn't prioritize anything high enough or low enough, there is no form of worship happening based on what you just said. So when he then says, if I don't prioritize everything or something high enough, then it's potential that I don't worship anything. By your logic, that tracks. Yet, your knee-jerk reaction is, no, you have to worship something, because that is your harmonization. It is your justification for why you worship this God, because everybody worships something. You just made your choice as to this was being what it is. We don't choose what we believe, Peterson. So either you are a huckster, you don't believe any of this, and this is some kind of self-profession to grift off of Christians, or you do believe, and this is a harmonization for why everybody else also worships and believes, just like you do, because the humanity is special and God created blah, 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 blah. Fucking go stroke your own dick somewhere else. He just caught your own fucking logical on soundness. Deal with it. You're not going to. You're trying to dodge it right now when I hadn't paused. But you literally just put yourself into this corner. You've done it several times with several interlocutors before. Thankfully, this young man seems to be keeping his eye on the ball of keeping things within a particular framework to not let you wiggle out too much.
Attend. Well, love.
So you think I
Apparently.
worship love?
Do you attend in consequence of love? See, I'm trying to define something. What do you mean worship?
Well,
I told you what I meant. What do you mean?
So I mean, something you worship is something that you have a reverential view for in a manner in which you believe it to be above and beyond normal things you like. Like you.
So do you have that attitude towards your wife?
I have that.
Do you privilege her compared to other women?
Of course I privilege her compared to other women.
Okay. No. See, you just fucking absolutely did. Oh, Jesus Christ. Okay, so first of all, you're interrupting him before he can finish his thought and jumping to conclusions as to what he means to fit within your particular framework when you just said you're asking his framework. This is intellectually dishonest, Peterson. You then ask a pointed question, essentially the positive inversion of, so when did you stop beating your wife? So do you privilege your wife over all? Well, most men do. If they are married to their wife, they're privileging them over any other woman, at least in some way. Not necessarily in every way, but at least in some way. So what you did was ask a truism to then get the yes out of him so that you can then build onto it, that he's agreeing with your foundation. He wasn't agreeing with your foundation. He wasn't agreeing with your framework. He's trying to answer your questions to not be rude, when really what he should do is say, Peterson, that's not what I said. Let me finish what I'm saying, then engage with it.
Don't worship her. Nor does she worship me.
By the definition you just offered, yes, you do.
No.
You just offered it.
No. By the definition that you interpret it as, that because he prioritizes her in his worship. What he said is he does not worship his wife because he doesn't hold her in a reverential position, that he holds her above anything else, which is what he said. What you have done is then extrapolated that back to individual interpersonal pair-body relationship interdynamics, tried to create a psychological disconnect within it with the truism request, which was accomplished because most people, especially if they love their wife, are going to answer in that way. He should have then said, Yeah, I love my wife, but let me finish what the fuck I'm saying so that you know what you're engaging with. Gerard, you should have pushed a little harder. Yeah, you shouldn't have been a Danny. You should have been a little bit more of a Zenith.
Definition that involved prioritization and elevation.
Well, and thinking that she is divine above and beyond what a normal
Other
natural
women-
phenomenon can be. Not other women, no, beyond any human being could ever be. I will prioritize her over.
See,
any
you're
other
making
human, but I
the
don't think
assumption.
that she is. so
You're
supreme.
making the assumption that only the thing at the top or the bottom has anything to do with worship. And I'm saying that's not true. It's a hierarchy of prioritization.
Yes, but when he pointed out that if it's a hierarchy of prioritization, whether it's a pinnacle or a foundation, that gradation, worship has to start somewhere. And if that level of prioritization is not met, then by definition, he would not worship anything. And therefore, your premise of everybody worships, even if they don't know that they worship, would be incorrect. You can't eat the L that you're fucking wrong, so you're trying to play these word games.
And there's either something at the top or the bottom, depending on the metaphor, or you're fragmented and confused. Those are the only options.
So let's say
You're either going in many directions
okay.
or you're going in one
So
direction.
let's suppose I'm fragmented and confused. Then you
Yeah.
agree I don't worship anything.
No, then you'd worship multiple things.
How? But so what's the threshold when it's worship? Right? I prioritize a lot of stuff.
I said that the closer you get to the pinnacle or the closer you
Close.
get,
Can you give me some sort of metric? How close do I got to get to this pinnacle?
do you know the difference between cheap literature and deep literature?
Yes.
So he asked how close you have to get to it. You then asked a subjective question. And I don't necessarily know what examples you're going to use, but let's just for the sake of a argument. James Joyce and Mad Magazine. These would be considered different levels of literary excellence. Well, of course they are. They're different mediums with different intentionality, and you're comparing things that aren't necessarily to be compared in that way. Just because two things are both comprised of the written word does not mean they are, in fact, the same category of thing. For example, if I write a particularly beautiful poem or a particularly beautiful set of lyrics, that does not then make it literature in the traditional sense. Poetry, some would argue it might be, but I don't think it does, because in my opinion, poetry is written to be read and performed widely, even if it's to yourself. And same with lyrics, you're performing the music of within those lyrics. That is a different thing. That is a performance art as opposed to a literary art, even though they do comprise words. And I know there's a lot of writers who will argue with me on this. This is my opinion. So this is pointing to the subjective nature of what he is asking, and therefore showing the very pungy trap that he is trying to lay out before Gerard here. And unfortunately, because Gerard seems to be a polite man, he's probably going to fall for it.
Okay, that's the same issue. And how do you distinguish between them? What's the difference between cheap and deep?
I mean, it's really an opinion-based thing, right?
Is it? So it's just an opinion that
plenty of-
Dostoevsky is better than a porno magazine.
Well, I've spoken to people who think To Kill a Mockingbird's cheap. It's one of my favorite books. So, I mean, people will differ on
Well,
it.
just because people are stupid about things doesn't mean that their opinion is valid.
Okay, see, so it's opinion based, doesn't make their opinion valid. Yet a relationship with a deity is by very definition a personal thing. It is not a societal thing. It is not even a church thing. Only the God would know whether or not you have been faithful. Anybody else's interpolation and interpretation of your actions may or may not be accurate, but they wouldn't know because they don't know all things. They don't know all time, and blah, blah, blah. Like, what you have done here is absolutely ignorant. Absolutely fucking ignorant. Jesus Christ, dude. Like,
That's
Jesus.
certainly
Do you,
true.
well, let me ask
I
you.
agree with that.
Okay, well, do you think there is a hierarchy in literary quality?
I think that there is a hierarchy to an extent in literary quality, but I think once you get to a certain threshold, it is just opinion. Like, I agree, Dostoevsky
Okay.
is better than a porno mag, but is F. Scott Fitzgerald
Why do
better
you
than
think
Ernest
that?
Hemingway? I don't know.
Yeah, fair enough. Why do you think that?
Because of what a book is, what literature is. Dostoevsky, he follows what literature is the purpose of more than the porno magazine
Okay,
does.
good. Well,
Okay, a porno mag is not literature, so it is not following the concept of literature at all. You are trying to compare apples to oranges. Just because they both happen to be fruit does not mean you can compare them in the same way. It's just
About
so
purpose.
so
and
let me
definitions.
yeah, sure. Let me give you an analog then.
Okay.
The depth of worship is analogous to depth of literary significance, and the closer you get to what's deep, the more religious and worshipful your practice.
So to
And
use
maybe you
your-
don't know what's at the bottom, but something needs to be, or you're confused.
Well, so to use your analogy, then how deep do I have to go for it to be worship? Do I have to be Catcher in the Rye? Do I have to be War and Peace? Or
Depends on what
Is
it depends on
Twilight
what
enough?
you're seeking for.
I'm seeking to know whether I worship something. You've claimed I worship something, and
Well,
I
if you want to
know.
have a deep and meaningful life, then you have to go all the way to the bottom or the top. And insofar
no. See, now you are doing an is-ought dilemma here. That isn't actually supported by any of the things you've said previously. If you want a deep and meaningful life, there are plenty of people who have deep and meaningful lives and never think about any of this shit at all. At all. They have no religious underpinning. They have no religious animus. They have no relationship with religion whatsoever. They were literally just raised a-religious. They did not interact with religions on any meaningful preponderance of their life, and therefore they didn't have any of this. And they were the stereotypical beach bum the whole time. They literally fucking never thought anything more than where the next wave was going to come from, or where the next fucking joint was going to get rolled. That is possible. And that was a deep and meaningful life for that person because it is what gave them fulfillment. What you have now done is say, I can judge what you consider deep and meaningful and disregard your opinion if I disagree. That's not how that works on a matter of personal opinion. This is not comparative literature. Now you're doing comparative sociology on a finite basis of a p-value of 1. It's fucking nonsense, Peterson. You know better than this. You went to fucking school and were trained to know better than this. I know you know better than this because I've heard you use this exact fucking point I'm making against other people who did this to you.
as you're capable of doing that, because otherwise you'll be fragmented and miserable and anxiety ridden and hopeless.
So I have to worship something to have a meaningful life. And if I
There's
worship,
no difference between those two things.
okay.
They're the same thing.
So if I don't worship anything, my life will not be meaningful, correct?
Well, that's the definition of nihilism.
Okay. So if I'm a nihilist, I don't
No,
worship it.
no. The definition of nihilism is that there is no grander purpose in the universe. Purpose is what we make of it. It has nothing to do with fucking worship. There are nihilists who worship nihilism. They don't consider it a religion, but they worship it as the most valuable single thought process in the universe. Nihilism and worship are not mutually exclusive in the way that you just implied. And because of this implication that you have made, you have then hamstrung all kinds of other interconnected fucking conceptualizations around this concept of purpose and meaning. Meaning can mean a lot of things. There's all different types of meaning: religious meaning, career meaning, personal accomplishment meaning, personal challenges meaning. There's meaning all over the. God damn it. I absolutely despise listening to this idiot.
Anything.
That's true. And then
Okay.
Mhm.
You just said everybody worships something. I think you've just agreed there is a class of people that doesn't.
well, they're incoherent in their worship, and hand gestures
No.
like that aren't going to help.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Look,
They're
if you're incoherent and fragmented and aimless, which is what happens if your objects of worship are unstructured and chaotic, then you're going to be anxiety ridden and without hope. That happens. That's a technical argument.
No, it's not a technical argument. It is an argument from your presuppositional axiom. It is not a technical argument. It's not something that is foundationally true or supported evidentiarially. This is a lie.
But there's happy nihilists.
Oh, there are.
How do you explain that there are happy nihilists then? Because
Well,
you just said they
the
can't
mere
be.
fact that you state that there are happy nihilists doesn't make it true. Like, what's your evidence? That how do you measure nihilism, and how have you?
Okay, how do you measure nihilism? That's not what you have to measure. Somebody who is a nihilist being happy, you have to measure their happiness. And there are plenty of ways we can measure their happiness, including with fucking neurochemistry, to where we can actually do a certain level of objective analysis on this. We can do fMRI scans on their brain to see if the pleasure centers of their brain are lighting up to indicate happiness, so on and so forth. You absolute fucking clown.
You're associated with happiness, and what's your definition of happiness? And have you compared them to religious people? Because if you do, by the way, it's clearly the case that religious people over the long run have better mental health. It's a well-documented fact in psychological literature.
No, they don't, Peterson. It is a well-documented fact. No, it is a well-documented correlation due to the preponderance of religious people being the majority. If the majority of the population is religious of one form or another, you are looking at the largest sample size. If you are then comparing it to the smaller sample size and not weighting your values correctly, this is not an appropriate way to evaluate these things. What you are doing here is, again, a false dichotomy fallacy. You are absolutely horrible at this, Peterson. Horrible. If it behooved me to do so, I could take a week with my grandson, talk him through many of these arguments, and my grandson, who is just starting freshman high school year this year, would kick the shit out of you, Peterson. You are a functioning vegetable.
Sure.
So your
Surprised you
claim
don't
is
need to
just
be
a claim.
watered
It doesn't
twice a
stand on
week.
anything.
So you disagree with the claim that there exists even one happy nihilist?
I didn't say that.
Okay, would you agree there exists at least one happy nihilist in the universe?
It's not a question that has any meaning.
Okay, so you say there cannot be happy nihilists. He then says, well, why do you say this? You then go into your fucking bullshit that I had to just pause a few seconds ago about. And now you're doing this when he points out that you say that there's no such thing as a happy. Oh, I didn't say that. You did, actually. But that's beside the point. Let's just say, for the sake of argument, you didn't. The next thing he said, well, then are you saying that? That's a question that has no meaning. It has every bit of meaning. Because if the answer is that there can be a happy nihilist who doesn't worship anything, who doesn't revere anything, then your premise fails. You know this, which is why you say it is a question that has no meaning to me.
As far as I'm concerned, because it depends on what you mean by happy, and it depends on the duration that you're trying to calculate over. Now and then there's probably some deluded soul who thinks he's a nihilist who's momentarily pleased with himself.
Okay.
But as a long-term strategy to deal with the future, to get along with yourself and with others, it's sadly lacking. That's why Nietzsche warned that when God died, as he announced in 1850, that people would be flooded with pointless, anxiety-ridden, hopeless nihilism. And that was what would attract.
Okay. First of all, Nietzsche, smart man, got a lot of shit right, a lot of shit wrong. But what you just did was misattribute the way he intended this. He said when God was dead, that they would be flooded with these feelings. What else did he say, Peterson? What else did he say caused these feelings of hopeless nihilism? Do you remember? I didn't think so. There's a lot of things that can cause this, even by Nietzschean philosophy. This is a cherry pick quote mine that you are using to try and reinforce your point from a singular philosopher, i.e., so not only are you cherry picking this, you are also cherry picking to do an argument from authority fallacy, because let's just work within your framework. Is Nietzsche God? Does Nietzsche know all things? Or did you just say something that you agree with? That without religion, people would be flooded with hopeless nihilism. Really, there's a lot of people who are flooded with hopeless nihilism, even within the Christian church. There are plenty of people who are harmed and given damage and trauma by those churches. There are plenty of people who can literally be browbeat and brainwashed into believing religion that they had no belief in beforehand, just because of the abuse that their community or their family puts them through. This is nonsense, Peterson. It is absolute and utter nonsense. You realize you just got painted into a corner and you're fucking hiding.
Track them for example, to the false gods of totalitarianism, which is exactly what happened. Because every
false gods of totalitarianism. Okay, so you're now using McCarthyism like almost verbatim now. Ooh, I got thunder. Ooh, God, it's bad. Just storms rolling through. The reality of this, Peterson, is that no, that's not how this works. Not how this works in the slightest.
everybody worships something, even atheists who think they don't.
Aren't there unhappy Christians or
Of course
devoted
there are.
believers? So worshiping something is neither sufficient nor necessary for happiness then.
Well, terrible things can come your way regardless, and that does happen. But it's the case that even when circumstances become...
See, Peterson, let's extend your logic before you go off on your diatribe. You can believe and be miserable because terrible things can come your way. You can not believe and plenty of good things come your way too. The inverse of that would happen. This would happen across a certain bell curve. Most of us would be somewhere in the middle, but the both extremes would exist within this population distribution that you're describing. You're describing poorly because you're intentionally trying to make this vague so that you can hide within the ambiguities. But you, by your very logic, what you just said right there, because Gerard's right, if worship is neither sufficient nor necessary for happiness, then you are very much painting yourself into another corner. So you just went from one corner into another one. Let's hear your deflection.
Deeply troublesome that how you're oriented makes a big difference. So I'll give you an example. So the book of Job deals with the issue of unfair suffering. So Job is a good man who has everything taken away from him in the most painful possible way.
Okay, I'm going to pause here shortly. Go back to the previous videos where I light him up like the Hindu festival of Diwali for the complete misinterpretation and this absolutely ignorant way of using Job as a cudgel against any and all fucking argumentation, as if it is the answer to any question you could possibly have about faith or belief or worship. Obviously, to Peterson, it is. It tells that he uses it so often because to him, you are a good Christian if God abuses you, if God takes everything from you, and you still believe, and you still follow blindly, whether or not you have any actual understanding or belief that you'll get any benefit from it. It is a oh, he'll give you something if you just show that you are fucking faithful to him. You will be rewarded in the end. Fucking Jesus, Peterson. Lazy, pathetic thinking.
That, right?
With Satan,
Yeah.
yes. And so he makes the axiomatic presumption that he won't lose faith in himself or in the spirit of being itself. And that helps him remain calm and forward-looking through this time of trial.
Doesn't he absolutely curse God?
No.
Yeah.
His wife tells
I'd have to go back and check the story to make sure. I think Peterson's actually right here that Job never curses God, but it's his wife that attempts to make him do so. I think so. Don't quote me on that. I'd have to go pull up my notes on Job to be 100% accurate, because depending on what translation you read depends on how that particular sequence goes. And there's a few translations and traditions that teach it one way and a few teach it a different way. I don't remember which one is the most accurate to the original scripture, so I don't want to say for certain. But I think Peterson is correct on that one. But even being correct on that final point, that final offhanded comment from Gerard as time ran out, the rest of what he said was complete and utter gibberish. So do not do the Texas sharpshooting fallacy as you are evaluating Gerard's performance here. And the couple of times that Peterson's right on this or right on that, but wrong on everything in the middle, you draw a little circle around the hits and ignore all the misses. Don't do that. Yes, he got a couple of things technically correct. I'm pretty sure on the last one that's one of them as well. I'd have to double check to be 100% certain, but I'm pretty sure. Those couple of correct answers were absolutely the fucking minority, the hyper minority. Less than 2% of what he said had anything to do with reality. The rest of it was his own Petersonian fucking like mad world that he fucking lives in ever since he went through his fucking transformation. Like, in all honesty, Gerard, you did pretty good. You weren't as good as Zener, but you did better than a lot of the other guys. You kept your cool. You didn't let them distract you too much. A couple times, but not too much. You did a good job. Peterson is just getting more and more slippery because he's getting a little bit like tired. I am at this point too. I mean, watched this thing for an hour. Sorry, just under an hour. 7 seconds less than an hour, plus the time I've been talking. It's nonsense. It's utter nonsense that Peterson was spewing. You should feel good that for the most part you caught him on all of the fucking glub shito crap he pulled. Thank you. You did okay. I still think Xena is number one and Parker's number two. You may, depending on how the rest of these people go, you may end up taking bronze. We'll see. But until next time, which will be in a few more seconds when I start up the recording again, like, subscribe, like it helps out. Yeah, we're not monetized yet, but like, I mean, it will help me. Maybe it'll make my headache go away if I see a few thumbs up to commiserate my pain. Help out if you can. Hi, I'm Jakk, and come back to us next time on FOFANews and follow us on Substack and click the little bell down below. It helps a small channel like us out immensely. Thank you for coming.